Well, first off, I want to acknowledge that we're on occupied land and that I'm in a very privileged position to be able to speak here. Yep.
Speak slower.
Yep. That being said, I'm also in a privileged position in the sense that I get to speak to you. And this workshop is kind of more of an educational video and visual art introduction to the Keffiyeh in a very superficial way because we have an hour and minutes. But that being said, I figured that I should tell you a bit about who I am to be standing here. First of all, I'm an agitator, meaning that I'm part of Agitate Queer People of Color collective of queer people of color in Ottawa. Also, I'm a student at this university doing my master's in international development and women's studies with a focus on the resistance of queer Palestinian women in Palestine. So, like I said, this workshop kind of came out of a discussion in Akka, close to the beach, of like these amazing people ranting about how the Keffiyeh, a symbol of resistance to them, has been appropriated either by the state of Israel or the fashion industry or or other things. We'll kind of take a look at that. Before I start, first of all, I do want to submit a trigger warning to the fact that some of the videos might provoke feelings of discomfort or angst or whichever other feelings that I don't want to identify because that's up to you. But if you do feel uncomfortable, need support, whatever, I don't mind you taking me out to find someone to do that. I'm sure that Organizing for Justice has some sort of support organized. And yeah, so this is a touchy subject because I am an Arab speaking about Israel. I am an Arab speaking about the Keffiyeh, and that kind of makes me uncomfortable, the fact that I feel that there's like a lot of pressure as to me being an expert about this issue, which I'm completely not. I'm kind of just sharing with you what I've discovered through my own research. And also, it is a space to discuss. You can ask questions whenever you want, but also there will be an actual space meant to discuss, and I'm hoping that can be somewhat of a safe space as much as we can. So no disrespect, to try to speak in like I statements, not generalize too much, and also feel free to tell someone they're making you uncomfortable. Before I go about with this, I kind of wanted to go around and get your name and basically have the first word that comes to your mind when you hear Keffiyeh. It doesn't need to be a word that you think the Keffiyeh is associated to, but like something that you've heard that like reminds you of Keffiyeh when I say that word. Keffiyeh, go.
I'm Courtney, and the first word that I thought was Dollarama because I saw first name Dollarama.
We'll be talking about that actually. Maybe you can continue and say that.
I'm Angus, and one word that came to mind was scout.
I'm Sean. A word that comes to mind is Palestine.
Trish. Word that comes to mind, I also go with the Dollarama.
I'm Maraka. The first thing I think about is just Arab identity.
Stephanie, and makes me think about what's in the resistance.
You're going to continue on the story?
Sure. I'm Haley, and I think Politicized. I'm Julia, and I think of like Palestinian struggles.
My name is Reem, and the first thing I think about is Palestine. My name is Keen, and I think about Palestine, but then I also think about appropriation.
I'm Jadja. I think of solidarity with Palestine.
I'm Shu, and I think about freedom and freedom.
I realized I didn't really say my name. My name is Ghaida Moussa, also known as Oliver, so you'll hear both. That's cool that you brought up all these different significations to the Keffiyeh, because that's kind of what we'll be exploring. And as Jessica Yee would say, Jessica Yee is an awesome person to quote, by the way. This isn't a what not to wear workshop. The idea behind it, or my goal, is to go through the past and present of the Keffiyeh, and for us to better understand where it comes from and to be conscious when we wear it or how we wear it. So I created kind of a mind map about this, complemented with pictures and videos for us to better grasp the different phases, if you will, of the Keffiyeh, and also understanding how these different phases interconnect. And before I dive into those phases, I want to start by stating something that I think we should keep in mind during the workshop, which is the idea of clothing as media. It was elaborated by Nick Lubin in the 60s, and the idea is that clothing is a form of media because it's attached to the body, and so it's kind of what justifies my workshop. The question is, in some sense, if the Keffiyeh is media, what are we conveying when we wear it? I kind of want to start with the basics, which is that the Keffiyeh, or hatta, or kaffiyeh, or however you want to call it, because there are probably like 50 names for it, is a traditional headdress for a large part of the Arab world, in the Middle East, and also in some parts of Africa, because it was first used to provide protection from the sun, or to keep basically sand from the eyes, etc. So the actual pattern of it was kind of reflecting on like fishing nets or ears of grain, or just a fun fact. So basically what I'm saying is that the Keffiyeh was, you know, something that belonged to peasants initially. And between like different countries and classes and tribes, you'll find different colors and patterns to the Keffiyeh. For example, in the Persian Gulf, it's often all white. Also, you can find that the red and white scarf is associated with Jordan. And then, you know, even in Palestine, the Keffiyeh was worn by peasants, right? But during the Arab Revolt, it became a symbol of Palestinian nationalism. Like the Arab Revolt was like this revolt against the British. And it was so intensely used that the British would imprison anyone seen wearing the Keffiyeh. And then in the 60s, you might know this guy, Yasser Arafat, who was a politician, was, you know, said to wear a keffiyeh like no other. It actually became his personal trademark, often wearing it on his head with the side like wrapped on his right shoulder, kind of forming a triangle, like the map of Palestine. And another really prominent keffiyeh wearer was Leila Khalid, who kind of became a really important image after the TWA Flight 840 hijack. She was part of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and she was one of the prominent women part of that movement. And what's really interesting is that her way of wearing the keffiyeh was a huge political statement because, as you see, she wrapped it around her head like a hijab. And it was kind of a fashion statement to, in some sense, reclaim the equality of women within the Palestinian resistance movement. And just a side note, this is an art piece by Muna Hatoum. Am I talking too fast? Yeah. Tell me again. Okay. Muna Hatoum made this, and I've kind of like associated with Leila Khalid because what she's done is taken a traditional keffiyeh pattern and mixed in women's hair. So I guess you can make what you want out of that. And today, I guess the keffiyeh symbolizes belonging. in Palestine, claiming a traditional national identity to the land is a political position in the face of, Zionist oppression and ideology founded in Europe that explicitly denies the existence of traditional Arab culture. And we'll take a look at that a bit later. So the Keffiyeh glosses over Palestinian class or religious divisions to depict a territorial connection to the land. This is an art piece by Dilo Hamdallah. It's like that little boy that you see. It's a very famous Palestinian resistance comic by Naji something, but I forget. And then we move on to solidarity. From the rise of the Keffiyeh as a political symbol in Palestine, from the 1960s on, we see activists outside the Middle East wearing it, either to, protest, kind of like an anti-war button, to protest either the Israeli occupation or the Israeli war in Lebanon, or the war taken on by the US in Iraq, or just more generally the oppression of the Middle East by the West. And as you know, the use of fashion during wartime is not something that's uncommon. Like if we look at khaki pants or the bandana or these kind of things. The Keffiyeh became fashion during the 80s in the West, during the first Intifada, more accurately, with waves of trend dying and being reborn again, with now like kind of a boom. And today we see celebrities even wearing it in solidarity with people like Mos Def, who takes part in concerts against the occupation, as well as the Fiasco, who is a very politically conscious rapper. But the issue is that often the solidarity Keffiyeh and the fashion Keffiyeh are not that easily, they're kind of blurred. And that's when we see people like Ricky Martin, who wore a traditional Jordanian Keffiyeh with Arabic writing on it that says Jerusalem is ours, in solidarity. And then when he gets called out on it by right-wing media, he basically said, "Oh, I had no idea what this meant." So that's where we see part-time solidarity, where only if it's convenient and you're not attacked for it. And then we see kind of this mix between hip and political, the political being hip as long as it's in. Kind of like this. Go green before it's no longer trendy. And like many subcultures in the West, like punk or bohemian styles, or even in certain anarchist circles, the exotic symbols of the other, basically whatever the state is against, is kind of reappropriated to create the self-defined otherness. In other words, to be cast as rebels or outcasts of society, we use the symbols that the state is against. And that's how hipster culture and activist circles kind of blend together. The hipster intifada. And throughout history, hipster culture has often acted as a medium to reduce racial divides, like the literary subculture of the 50s that fashioned its identity around black jazz culture and Harlem Renaissance, for example. And it's not to say that some people don't wear the kaffiyeh in solidarity, but to bring up the fact that solidarity is in itself becomes fashion. What do we wear? How do we wear it? When do we wear it? And the decision to wear kaffiyeh in itself, whether it be in solidarity or not, is a fashion statement, right? Like you're basing your solidarity through fashion. And eventually, all movements in this sense, like activist movements, are co-opted by the corporate media, and you find people like Madonna making millions off guerrilla insurgency images, and then Che Guevara becomes a capitalist landmine and a sexual icon, and also MIA wears it up to some fame, and then radical chic image that's not so radical, even at times regressive, and also not so chic, even sometimes distasteful, in my opinion. Like that. But obviously, for something to be marketable, it needs to be, rid of its political significance and to become less threatening or even exoticized. And that's how we see, this is funny, a greasy global chic scarf is what they call it.
Oh my god.
Well, I'm piercing tourists is wearing it, obviously.
And
That's so awful. You're so chic.
listen. And that's how we see Keffiyehs being considered in the runway in Italy and being sold by Urban Outfitters as an anti-war woman scarf, and then later on something like desert scarf or something in the likes once they got called out by pro-Zionist activists. Also emerges website after YouTube video, after article, after blog that teaches people how to wear a kaffiyeh and stuff like that. And not to mention the different colors and sizes that are to complement one's wardrobe.
It's giving you pattern on diaper.
Yeah, and this like rise of shirts with the kaffiyeh pattern. I know on Sex and the City, Sarah Jessica Parker also wore like a skinny thing that was just the pattern, right? And also I read so many articles about this, and you see people on the street that they stop and they have like 30 kaffiyehs at home, and they have no idea where it comes from. In the same way that Che Guevara T-shirts were commodified. And as one of my friends would say, it's funny how what used to belong to the peasants is now being marketed. Yeah. I mean, the irony of that is pretty intense. I want to show two videos. The first one is